When I was a kid, I sometimes had a hard time sleeping at night because I was worried about stuff. And my mom knew that. And so she said to me, "Sweetheart, don't worry so much." She said, 99% of the stuff you worry about never happens anyway. And as I've grown through the years, I do think her math might have been a little bit off. But maybe 90% of our worst fears never happen. Most of what we worry about is not something that's going to actually come to pass. But sometimes there's that 10% that does. I have a friend who has been talking for a while about the fact that he thought his job was on the line. And that was a huge surprise to him because he'd had the same job for 20 years and he was very respected in his field. And he had come through lots of different seasons of work. But he had a new boss, and he had known the boss from a previous part of his life, and he always kind of knew that guy didn't like him, and he felt like the boss was scheming to get rid of him. He said he got written up a couple times for bogus things and just kind of had to acquiesce, and he said he felt like there was a sword hanging over him. And then a couple of weeks ago, he came in on a Monday, and his boss was there and said, "We're letting you go. We need you to turn in your phone and clean out your desk and head out." What are we supposed to do when the thing we worried about actually does happen? When our fear actually does come true? We hear in the gospel about that dynamic because we're hearing about Peter having faith to say to Jesus, "If it's you, command me to come out on the water." And you may have prayed that way before. "Lord, if it's you, show me the job you want me to have. God, if you're there, help me find the best spouse. If you've got my back, you've got to help me with this child of mine who's in trouble." And there's nothing wrong with praying that way. There's nothing really bad about it. After all, it right in itself demonstrates faith. You wouldn't be talking to God if you didn't believe in God, and you wouldn't be talking in that way if there wasn't a relationship. But if you listen, you can hear that there's a string attached. There's a string attached when we talk to God that way. There's a little bit of prove it baked right in there. God, if it's you on the water, prove it. If you're good and you love the people you've created, prove it. It's not all bad, and most of that is in our unconscious, but it's there. And after all, we know exactly how the Roman soldiers talked to him on the day that he died. "If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross. If you're the Son of God, prove it." If you pay attention, you'll see that when we're in real trouble, we don't pray like that. That's not how people in real trouble pray to God. We don't say prove it, because prove it means that you're holding some of the cards. Prove it means you feel like you can bargain with God. It's got a little bit of a playground bully ring to it. It's got a little bit of an organized crime ring to it, like, "Hey, God, we could have a nice little partnership here, but you got to play ball." You know what I'm saying? And when we're in real trouble, we don't have any illusions that we've got a bargaining chip with God. We don't bargain at all. We just beg. When we're in real trouble, we don't have time for games like that, where we try to appeal, hope that God will want to prove something to us. Not when we lose our jobs. Not when we have test results come back from the doctor that confirm what we most feared. Not when we're making our one call from the police station. not when we're sinking and about to drown. In those times, we don't bargain at all. We scream out just like Peter did, "Lord, save me." For those who have prayed that way, I find that there's a couple of things that we learn from that experience. And one of them is that if we're paying attention, we realize God really does save us. The fact that we're sitting here right now is proof of that. Sometimes it's only in retrospect that we can see it. We don't recognize where the help is coming from in the moment, but it's in reflecting on the situation, in looking back on it, we say, "Oh, God really was there for me." This confluence of situations that happened clearly had the hand of God in it. Or we might say, "I could never have come through that without God. There's no way I had the strength to manage that on my own." The other thing that we find when we call out with that kind of desperation to God is we realize that there is faith to lean on and there is a peace we can access. Some of us are surprised by that, but a lot of us have been banking peace in an account that we didn't really know about. And the way we do that, in large part, is by being here right now. There are people here right now that are going through big things, right in this room with us. And there are others of us who maybe have been through big things in the past, but right now it's just an ordinary time in our life. There's nothing so dramatic going on. But whether we fit into either category, we can recognize that to be here right now is like putting money into an account. It's like a deposit into a spiritual bank account, if you want to look at it that way, that you'll be able to draw on later. When I get called to the hospital, there are times that I will be in a hospital room with a family that is going through something just terrible. And yet, there is more peace in that room than in the room next door where things are much less serious. Sometimes there's more peace in the room where things are very, very serious because the people in that room have an account and they're able to draw from it. There is peace that they can withdraw. There's faith that they can withdraw. And that can't be faked. That relationship that gets built in the ordinary times is what really helps us, what we can cash in on during the difficult times. It doesn't involve a bargain with God. It involves depending on what we've done in our relationship. So this week we are being invited to sit with this and the two ways that Peter talked to God on each side of the experience of walking on the water. Can you name a time that you really prayed with total abandonment to God? If you're trying to think of a time, one of the clues that helps us go right to where it is it's a time when you stopped caring about how you looked. You didn't care if someone saw you crying or if there was snot running down your face when it happened. If you've ever had one of those moments where you didn't care that other people were seeing you at your worst, that might have been the time that you were pushed right to the edge where you just called out, "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner." I have never had, and I guess never will have, the experience of giving birth. But women have told me some remarkable stories about how amazed they are at themselves, at how a powerful experience like that takes away all of the normal worries they would have about how they look or about how other people see them. If you've ever given birth, I'm sure you can relate to this. You stop caring. You're completely exposed. You have no idea who's in the room. You know you don't look good, and you don't care because something much bigger is happening. That's one of those moments that helps us to tune in on, when have I called out to God with real desperation? And what was that experience like for me? What did it teach me about God? If we're saying, God, if it's you, or if you want to show something to me, we're still in the bargaining phase. And what that means is we're not that desperate. It's kind of like when we say we're starving and someone offers us broccoli and we go, no, I'm okay. If we don't want broccoli, then we're really not starving. And if we think we can bargain with God, we're not that desperate. We're probably not praying with the kind of abandon that we're talking about today. When we call out the way Peter did, there's no bargaining chips. There's just a desire for God to help. Maybe those moments are what we need to get to a place that we can get no other way. Because sometimes it's only when God is all we have left that we realize God was all we ever needed in the first place.